Hi everybody, once again, this is Zeri, Persian pen name on AO3, week 40-something, 42, of my transition. Uh, let's see, what's been going on this week? A lot of work bullshit. We're changing out the systems at the hotel, like the computer system that gets used. It's bad. Well, rather, the training is bad. The new system will probably be good once it's finished being made. Um, the first part of the training that we got was just them going, hey, we haven't implemented all of the things that we plan to implement, including stuff that you need every day. But it's already gonna get put into production. We're like, that's all we've got now is the new system, which can't do all the things it needs to do. Um, the training, as I said, is bad. Uh, there's an existing. It's a Hilton property, I don't know. There's an existing Hilton property website for employees. You log in with your employee credentials, and part of that is there's a training subsite of that, Hilton University. Um, pardon. Which is where the training happens. This new system requires a new site, because it's a whole browser based. Instead of being a program, it is now a website. So if the internet goes down, previously if the internet went down, we wouldn't be able to take reservations from online, but we could still do like walk-ins and things like that, as long as we still had electricity. Now if the internet goes down, there's nothing we can do. Literally can't do anything. We can't make keys, we can't make walk-ins, there's nothing. So that's bad. But the part that really got me, I was going and doing my training, as one does. And first of all, my boss is not tech literate in the slightest. Um, sorry, my throat is still a little froggy. He just told me, hey, there's a link on the desktop, go to that, and that'll open up the training website. But that's not, it doesn't actually tell you anywhere to go to actually start the training. It just shows up, it appears to show a virtual hotel in the new system, which you haven't learned yet, so you don't know how to navigate yet. So you basically just gotta dick around until you stumble upon how to start your training. So that's bad. So once I did that, and I figured out, okay, well, this is how I get to the training, half of the training subsections, because there's, category, subcategory, 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 etc. from there. Half of them are things where it's like, okay, go, here's an instruction, go and do this thing on this part of the website. Go and, like, here is the incoming reservations. Now you are wanting to modify something something, so go to the search bar to look for the correct guest, and then do da 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 da. And that's fine. That's a good hands-on way to learn the new system. The other half of them would open up the existing Hilton employee site, and then another tab that says, like, sorry, they would open up, so you have the main tab, which is where you're doing, like, it's the virtual hotel. You've got another tab, which is the Hilton employee site. And then you get another tab saying, hey, we're about to open a pop-up, and then a third extra tab, which is the actual training. Which, instead of being the hands-on thing, is just a video of, here's how you do a thing. But regardless of which path you go on, whether it's you yourself are clicking in the virtual hotel, or here's a bunch of tabs to take you to the same damn training website you've been using for years, either way, it collapses all of the training info. So as soon as it's done, you have to go back to the start of the training thing, go searching through each of the categories and subcategories to get back to where you were, so you can click on the next bit of training thing. And for front desk, just the required stuff, because there's also optional things that you can do if you want further training, that is 66 times that you have to that you have to navigate to find the training menu, and then search through it to find where you're going. That's not necessary. That's bad design. Sorry, I'm just gonna arrange myself again. So, so that's really annoying, but not a deal breaker. The deal breaker comes because I was doing the training bit, which is the go ahead and walk you through on things on the virtual hotel part, and it's the walk-in section, which is, somebody who doesn't have a reservation, they just show up and they need a room, which perfectly fine. I highly recommend that you do make a reservation in advance, or at least call and make sure a place has openings, especially if it's a tourist town and it's a weekend, because if it's a tourist town and it's tourist season and it's a weekend, you're not going to get a room. It's just not going to happen. But anyway, so I'm doing this bit of training, and it's saying, hey, go ahead and, like, in all of the how to make a reservation things, it's, okay, here's so-and-so and, imaginary guest information. Go ahead and put it into the information boxes. On this one, it specifically asks for you, the person being trained, to put in your own personal information, which, no, there's no need for that to be the case. Why would I? So, I don't do that as a general rule. Yeah. Despite what's, because, there's no point to that. So I'm putting in stuff. I'm just testing things. I'm putting, like, this person's name is, how many characters can I put in this field? Their address is, does this only take numbers and letters, or can I do special characters? The state is, why are you letting me put in this many letters? The telephone number is, why are you letting me put in letters at all? Things like that. All of which it allowed. It didn't know what to do with that information, but it definitely allowed it. But then there was a hang-up where it wouldn't complete that section. So I'm trying to do the put in information, put in form of payment, check in the guest. That should be all you need, because that's all you actually need. You just need, okay, who is in this room? How are they paying? What means of contacting them do we need to have in case of an emergency? We're done. That's it. That's all you need. Then you give them keys, and then they go and they have a hotel room. we only need a telephone number and an address in case something important gets left behind and we need to contact them and then send them the thing. That's the reason why, that gets asked for. But so this website was asking for my personal information, I wasn't putting that in. So because the training was hanging up at this section, I was like, okay, well maybe I'm missing something, maybe there's something going on here. I'm still in the virtual hotel. I'll go look on the in-house section, so things that in the system in the virtual hotel are already checked in, and see if these walk-ins that I've been doing are showing as having been checked in. So I go there, and there's the whole big list of clearly fake information that they have been using. So, like, they use it for, okay, we've got, pardon me, 30 people with the last name Donovan, because the previous thing was like, you're looking for a guest with the last name Donovan, so just grab one of these. And they make a whole bunch. And I was like, okay, it's weird that they made like 30 of them, but whatever. But so I see, okay, so here's the 30 under Donovan, and, here's mine saying, why can I put in such a long-ass last name? And it looks different than the corporate-made ones. Just, like, there were just different fields that, weren't necessary. Like, oh, all of the ones that I'm bullshitting and making don't have a membership number because there's no reason for it to have one. Stuff like that. And then I see there's actually... there are more in-house walk-in stuffs that look like the kind of thing that I would make with the, just putting a key smash in as the name or what have you, that look, they don't look like the corporate ones, they look like the ones that I was making, but I didn't make them. That's odd. And then I see 3 or 4 that all are all clearly variations on one person's name and information. They all have the same address, they all have the same telephone number, email, all of that. But it's like, I'm not going to use the actual name, but it's like, John Doe, J Doe, J2 Doe, etc., etc. And I slowly come to realize the thing that's happening here is that this virtual hotel that the website has made for training is shared among trainees. Which means that all of these J, Doe, etc., whatever, stays are another trainee who is doing what the website has asked and is putting in their own personal information without realizing that I can see it, and so can anyone else who is doing this training, which is getting rolled out across all of the Hilton properties. So the reason they've got, 30 Dawson last names is because they expect 30 people to be on at whatever time period, or they expect to have up to 30 folks up at a time who are all doing the portion of the training where you need that last name so they can all just grab one of these rooms. Which means that all of these trainees are being asked to put in their own identifying personal information without it being secure, without it being told to them that it's not secure, without their consent to have it being shared. Like, If I was an asshole, I could send this person a postcard saying, hey, I got your information from your job. And this is one of the very early training things. This is like, there's the getting started section, and then there's checking in and walk-ins, and like, that's, within the first hour you should be doing this. So like, this is not like managerial level and up or what. This is people who are not going to finish this training because, look, we get a lot of turnover at the hotel, just our location. I'm going to say 8 out of 10 people who make it through the interview process and begin training don't actually finish the training, or they finish it and then don't last a week after that. So not only is it just the number of people who end up working at a hotel whose information is getting compromised, it's the other 80% of people who are not going to end up working there a long time, whose information is being compromised. And that's not fucking okay. That's probably illegal in some manner. I don't know enough about laws to say that, but it's not good. It's the kind of shit that is definitely going to get somebody sued. So I started putting in for all of my names and stuff, hey, other people can see this is shared. And I told my boss, I was like, hey, dude, boss man, we're a franchise location, and so you have access to corporate stuff that I don't have access to. You need to know this is happening. Please contact whoever is your corporate contact person, because they need to know this is happening. Because most people who are in businesses aren't in IT, and so the managers and shit aren't doing this training. My boss doesn't know how to make a link. He doesn't know the difference between downloading a file and opening a file. And I know that because I have sat there and watched him try to open a file 5 or 6 times, and the little thingy pops up on the bottom where it's like, saved at blank, saved at blank. Now it's, document 2, document 3, and he's got like 6 copies of it, and I'm like, you've already downloaded it. You just need to go to that folder, and your downloads folder, and fucking open it. It's not difficult. But he doesn't know what I'm talking about, because he's not tech literate. He's a multimillionaire, and he's not tech literate. That's a whole other can of worms. My boss is terrible. But he doesn't understand what the issue is there. So I'm telling him there is a thing that they are doing that is going to get them super crazy sued. You are also liable in this. And he's like, nah, that's corporate's problem. They can deal with it. And I'm like, oh my god. So I went to the Federal Trade Commission website, and I filed a complaint, and I gave them all of the information that I had. It's not good, y'all. So if you work at a Hilton property, don't put your own name into anything goddamn ever. That's, I guess, all I can say. Yeah. I showed this to my friends who are more tech people than I am. Like, I've got several programmer friends, all of that good stuff. And they were all 201, appalled and not surprised. So, that's where that is. They said a lot of words that I don't know enough about computers to remember. But they were like, oh, this is a blank blah blah. And I was like, probably. So, that's a thing. But yeah, so that's been this week. Also, the training just randomly decides to just stop and not let you go forward several times. It just does that. I spent all of my Tuesday. They took down the old system, by which I mean it was still physically there. You could open the program and look at stuff, but you couldn't make any changes. Every time you tried to do anything, even under my boss, who is terrible, he tells everyone to use his name and login and password for everything, which is bad. We should not do it. But whatever. So any of us who know the program better than him, which is all of us, yeah, we could do what the fuck ever we wanted. Like, we changed, one of my coworkers changed it so that no-shows don't get charged. Just because, why? They weren't here. Don't take their money. Which is a great bit of solidarity. I'm very happy that that happened. Yeah, we have managerial override for anything. Theoretically, we should be able to force anything through that we want. But part of what happened on Tuesday was basically all of the permissions for all of the users, including the general manager, got revoked. So we were able to look at stuff and search at stuff and do nothing with it. So people would call up and they're like, I'd like to make a reservation. And I was like, I would love to help you. Unfortunately, right now we can't. Because we can't, the old program is no longer letting us do things, and the new one doesn't exist yet. So they were like, well, so what the fuck am I supposed to do? And I was like, well, you can call up the corporate line, here's that number. You could go online and do it there, and it will eventually, hopefully, hit our system. Or you can try calling back later. And that was my Tuesday for like 8 hours. While also running around and telling my boss, please stop doing this thing here that you're doing because it's wrong and bad. So during this time where we had, basically, we were not able to check people in. So before the old system got disabled, what we did was we checked everybody in, which means we would not be able to change what card they were on, which normally we give, we have that option. And we're not able to change the room number that they're in, which normally they have that option. And we went ahead and we ran the night audit, which we ran it at like 4 p.m. instead of 2 a.m. So, which means that as far as the computer is concerned, it is now tomorrow. Which means we can't put in anything where the stay would be for tonight. Because tonight already happened, so we're done. We can't do anything for it. And we can't put it as day use, which would normally... Which is normally what would happen, which would be telling it to... Day use is the amount of time that happens after audit and before checkout. So if you show up at 4 in the morning and you're like, look, I just need a hotel until noon, that's day use. So... that's that. But we don't have the permissions anymore, so we can't do that either. Let me see. Sorry. But anyway, so we couldn't do that, but we're still getting walk-ins. Like, people still show up and they need a room. So I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be a thing that happens, so my boss is just like, just write down their info somewhere. And I'm like, okay, so you don't. So I print out a report that shows where all of the vacant rooms are. All of the rooms that are clean and empty and ready for someone to go in them. And then I, myself, open up Excel and I make a little page just for today. Of, here's the person, here is the room, here's the time, here are any notes that we need to know. And that's good. That's the thing that we can use for everything that we can't currently do in the computer. So somebody comes downstairs and they want to get some snacks and put it on their room. Okay, well, I can't put anything on your room right now. But I could write down on here, John Smith at room 100 got a Snickers bar. That's $2. That'll go on his room later. And then later on, hopefully with the new system, when it's up and working, someone will go ahead and put that $2 on there and it's fine. So we get a walk-in coming in, and first I have to go and ask the boss, okay, well, I can't search for what walk-ins would be for today. What's the pricing on any of our anything? And he's like, just call it 120. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, everything's... All of the rooms are 120 today. Who cares? So I go over there, I'm like, hey, these are what our issues are. Here's what's going on. All of the rooms are 120 today. We can't change that. We can't put your Hilton number on there. We can't put your AAA discount. Like, it's just, this is the rate for today. If you would like that, you are welcome to it. And she's like, okay, well, how are you gonna get our payment info? And I had already asked the boss about this, because I was like, okay, so what do you want to do for that? Because we can't run a credit card. We can collect that information, but we can't authorize anything. He's like, oh, just write down their credit card info and give it to me. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, just keep it in plain text, completely unsecured, just sitting on your desk, where anybody could walk in because you don't even close your door? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna do that. So what I went with is I just made a photocopy of the person's ID and the card that they wanted used on the same page. Wrote down on that page the room number and the amount to be charged, which was just 120. Put that in an envelope. Wrote the room number on the outside of the envelope. On my little log sheet, wrote, so-and-so checked into this room at this time for this rate. And put that envelope into the safe. Now, in theory, all the boss has to do is open up that envelope, say, oh, is this person with this information for this room for this price? I will put all of this in here, and then I will shred this piece of paper. Do I know if he did that? I have no idea. I was not in yesterday. I'm not in today. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that's my days off. I do doubles on Sunday so that I get a 3-day weekend. I've done literally everything that I can to keep that incompetent asshole from fucking up people's shit. Which is a good 60% of my job. Well, maybe 40% of my job. And then like another 40% of my job is being a human, being a visible human that guests can yell at, because that is where your job security lives. People get mad at whatever. They get mad at the website, they get mad at corporate policies, they get mad at my boss doing dumb shit. They don't want to yell at a computer because that's not satisfying. They want to yell at a human. And that's where I come into play. I'm here, I'm visible, and I don't take it personally. And that's what... I'm not going to get mad, and I'm not going to get the cops called on anybody. And that's employable. So... I will listen to them complain. I will take the abuse as long as it's not too egregious. I will fix whatever issues I can. And I won't dwell on it. That's customer service. So, and then the other actual, remaining 20% is actually doing work. So, it's not a difficult job. But anyway, so that's been my week. And then, yesterday when we were out running errands, my spouse and I got a text message from my boss saying, "Hey, did you finish your training?" And I said no, because it froze and I wasn't able to continue. I'm not even halfway through it. Like, it's not well set up, and it keeps freezing. I've got the gist of the system. I'll be able to be fine on my shift on Saturday. But, like, there's things that I don't know how to do yet, and that's what, I just have to keep trying to force it through whatever is the next section. But anyway, so he's like, okay, well, come in on Thursday or Friday, and you can do it then. And I'm like, no, I'm not. We have established that my days off are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm not showing up on my days off. That's not gonna happen. Those are my days when I got shit to do. We've got one street legal car in this household, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are the days that we use it for things other than me going to work. This is, spouse and I have doctor's appointments tomorrow. My mother-in-law needs to go places. Shit gets done. And I am not sure if it's fortunate, but I'm definitely in a position where my boss isn't going to fire me, because then he would have to find somebody who was willing to work for what I'm willing to work for, and also be as reliable as I am. And honestly, it's not likely. I know that sounds self-aggrandizing. I'm good at my job. My job is not difficult. I could be doing the same thing elsewhere for quite a lot more money. I hope to one day be doing that. I'm waiting to hear back from... There's somebody I've got a line on who's building their own hotel and needs reliable workers, and is going to pay almost twice what I'm making here an hour. And the building is still being renovated, so the only reason I'm still at this job is that I keep going, well, I'll look for stuff later. It's my my dislike for job hunting and my like for downtime is what has kept me at this job forever. So, anyway, that's been Zeri bitching about work theater. Pardon. But anyway, now for what we're actually here for, which is Zeri reading some stories. So this one is more original work. It's from Trick or Treat Exchange 2018. It's called Pieces of Us by Silex. Oh, one minute, I gotta silence my phone. I told you to be quiet. Apparently I did not say it enough. So. Alright, Pieces of Us by Silex. So my voice is getting clearer. Some days I have a bit of falsetto back that I can do. Other days I don't. We're, still letting that settle. Lilani let the waves wash her onto the beach so that she could lay in the surf. The sun and sand were hot against her scales, and after a year at sea, the serpent was content to savor the feeling. As she did every year, she returned to shore to shed her skin, not simply because it was necessary, but because it felt right. She was different from her sisters, who took the form of seals, and lay basking on the rocks whether they wore one skin or another, and she felt that she appreciated the difference more. Land was where she went to shed, and sea was where she lived the rest of her life. Two distinct parts of her life, aspects evenly divided. The black and green scales of her back were worn and dull from time and scars, and lice and small creatures clung between the cream-colored scutes of her belly, but shedding would fix that. New skin, new scales. A new year of her life. As it always did, the splits started at her nose with an odd, itchy feeling. To suddenly remember what it was like to have skin rather than scales, soft skin that could feel how rough the sand was, and hair for the breeze to blow through, was a shock. The first bit, when her skin rolled past her neck, but wasn't quite down her shoulders yet, was the hardest part. She wriggled and thrashed in the sand, feeling her arms for the first time in a year, pushing herself awkwardly out of her old skin, with a body not yet fit to move. Once the skin was past her arms, the rest was easy. She could take it with nimble fingers and push it effortlessly off of her, then stand on unsteady legs. Carefully she would walk inland, feel the grass beneath her feet, and smell all the flowers and living things. Able to taste, she would savor the fruits that grew in abundance on the land, and when she grew tired of all the sweetness, she would hunt small animals with their red, warm flesh, so different than the fish that she ate for the rest of the year. For now, though, she was content to lay on the sand and enjoy the cries of the birds overhead and the crash of the waves on the shore, becoming accustomed to the unmoving ground beneath her. A sound not unlike the birds woke her up. Laughter. Her warm and furry sisters laughed when they played. Was it one of them, curious and wanting to know who she was and why she was there? She opened her eyes and rolled over to see a young woman, human by the way she wore plants and dead skins to conceal herself. Lilani had seen humans before, from a distance, and they were strange to her. According to her sisters, they were dangerous thieves, looking to take your freedom. This human didn't seem particularly threatening, smaller than her and soft-looking. The young woman was staring at her, eyes wide and frightened. She'd forgotten how expressive her own face was when she shed her skin to wear the form of a woman, and the sight of such comical surprise, reminding her, made her laugh. The woman's warmly colored skin went pale, and she ran across the beach, vanishing into the lush greenery beyond. Possibly the most fascinating thing about it all was that she had been clutching Lilani's discarded skin to her chest. That was fascinating, but made little sense. With only the skin they were born in, humans made new ones for themselves to pretend to change. It was an oddity of theirs, similar to how careful her warm sisters were to hide away their sealskins when they came to shore. Strange, but not really anything to concern herself with. Instead, she wandered the beach, adjusting to walking before she went inland, where the ground was more treacherous. There, by a pool of sweet water, she encountered the human woman once again. Lilani had been searching the bushes and trees for birds' nests, hoping to find eggs, or even better, young chicks to eat, and then wash down with clear, fresh water. The woman looked at her, still pale and nervous, but trying to hide it with how she stood, feet planted firmly, as though she too were unused to how the ground remained still, arms crossed over her chest. "You won't find it there." Lilani stared at her. What wouldn't she find? "I hid your skin away someplace you'll never find it, and now you have to come with me." That wasn't how it worked, not even for her sisters. They had countless baying songs about stolen skins, and diving off cliffs to drown rather than live on land. The songs were sad, but triumphant in a way, full of lost daughters and sisters, reunited in the most morbid of ways. Lilani was far from trapped, but the human woman sounded so certain that she nodded agreeably, curious about the nature of the game that was being played, for her sisters enjoyed games, and perhaps the humans were similar. She followed the woman to her home and found that she lived alone. Her home built away from any other humans. That suited Leilani fine. Though she occasionally sought out the company of her sisters, she preferred quiet to their noise when she could hear it, and their constant motion. After endlessly swimming through the restless waves, there were times when she craved quiet and stillness, as the human woman clearly did. The woman lit a small fire outside her dwelling, much to Leilani's delight. In the past she had seen fire from a distance, warm flickering light, but up close there was so much more to it. Different colors to the flames, warmth you could feel, and the sound and smell were like nothing she'd ever known. Even the way the smoke and heat made her eyes water was something to savor for its newness. The wonders only continued as the woman proceeded to use the fire to cook a meal for the two of them, introducing Leilani to new experience after new experience, new flavors, and meat cooked hotter than blood, so that the juices ran clear. After the meal, the woman asked Leilani to help her clean, which she did without question, mimicking the actions of her host. As they cleaned, the woman talked to her, telling her a story about how if a Selkie's skin was stolen, she would stay on land and be the faithful wife of whoever took the skin. It was a story that she had heard many times from her warm sealskin sisters, who only had a single skin to last them their whole lives. Hearing it from a human was very different, one of triumph and love and loyalty, rather than loss and regret and pain. She understood the version her sisters told, but liked the human version better. It was still sad in its own way, but there was more to it. Leilani felt that the truth was probably somewhere between the two, but she wasn't going to argue with the woman's story when she was a guest in her home. The woman offered Leilani a place to sleep off the meal in her own bed, a mat of woven leaves, soft and sweet-smelling, with more woven leaves and animal hides to lay beneath. The woman, also tired from so much good food, lay next to her. It was very different than laying on sand or grass. Better because it was soft and dry, and the smoke from the fire kept the biting bugs away from her soft human skin. As she rested, she wondered if this was how the birds felt in their nests in the trees, for the softness of the human woman's bed gave her the sensation of floating, despite being on land. The young woman lay next to her, close but not touching her, and when by chance they brushed against each other, the woman would pull back as though startled. Leilani assumed it to be some oddity of humans, and thought little of it, enjoying the warmth and the feel of the woman's bed. The next day the woman woke her up with more food, fruits and a bowl of something sweet that she had no name for, and the human woman took for granted. Leilani ate with the human woman, and again helped her clean, understanding better this time and not needing to watch. The woman talked about mundane human things, her plans for the day, and why she lived alone. It wasn't interesting to Leilani, so she interrupted with something far more important. "What's your name?" After all, if she was a guest, it was only right for her to know. "Malika," the woman said, sounding surprised. "Do you have a name?" Leilani laughed and introduced herself, wondering why it was a surprise to the young woman, Malika, that she had a name of her own. When they were done cleaning, Malika gave her a little tour of the house and its surroundings, explaining that everything there was hers as well now that she lived here. The garden, full of plants and flowers, was especially fascinating for Leilani. There were far more of them than Leilani had thought, and Malika happily explained what each one of them was, how to cook the ones that were food, and what to do with the others. Then she wove a circle of flowers for Leilani to wear, because today was a celebration for the two of them. It was, Leilani was quick to agree. Never had she had an experience like this on land, and Malika was quite generous. Her saying that seemed to leave the human woman feeling relieved. Some of the nervousness from the previous day vanished, replaced by exuberance. Leilani asked her questions about the plants and house, and anything else she could think of, and listened happily as Malika answered. It was something she understood well, with how infrequently she came to the land each time was a new... It was something she understood well, with how frequently she came to the land each time was a new experience, And for Malika, being able to explain it must have been like experiencing it for the first time. Later, Leilani decided it was a favor she would return somehow when they visited the sea. They didn't go near the sea that day, though. Just the clear pool where they had met, as Malika taught her the different plants around the house. That night, once again, Malika cooked for them, a different meal this time. Fish, but in a way Leilani had never tasted. It wasn't just that things tasted different as a human. It was that Malika used leaves and bits of plants to change the fish and cooked it until it was turned white and flaked apart. This time, Malika didn't gasp and pull away each time they touched as they shared the bed. It made Leilani think of her sealskin sisters and how they lay alongside and on top of each other on the rocks. The next morning started the same. Then Malika offered Leilani dead skins and leaves to cover herself with, calling it clothing. The clothing clearly belonged to Malika, for it was too small, both loose and tight in all the wrong places, but Leilani accepted it for what it was, a gift. Once she was dressed, Malika took her down a different set of paths, wider and more well-worn, to show her where the other humans lived. There were men and women and even children, and Malika introduced her to a few of them, explaining that Leilani was a guest of hers. Leilani found the children fascinating, never having seen them up close before. Instead of looking at her with wary, guarded expressions, they asked her where she had come from. "The sea," she had answered truthfully, earning disbelieving squeals from the children and frowns from their parents. "Malika's crazy," the children warned. "She lives alone and watches the water." "I don't live alone anymore," Malika protested, and then left, taking Leilani with her. That night Malika was quiet and sullen, troubled by what the other humans had said, but pretending otherwise. Again, Leilani could relate. Her sisters were so different from her that there were times she couldn't stand to talk to them. The next day, Malika spent the whole day cooking an enormous meal and announced that they were having a celebration. Then she taught Leilani how to dance, which was like swimming, except there was no water moving around her, so she had to pay attention to how her body moved, rather than relying on instinct and the currents to carry her. Malika was a patient teacher, and by the time they were too tired to continue, Leilani could do a fairly good job of imitating her motions. That night they slept in each other's arms, much like how Leilani would wrap herself in seaweed to keep herself from being pulled away during storms. Each day that followed brought with it new wonders. Malika taught her singing one day, let her cook the next, and after that started teaching her how to make clothing for herself. There were countless little gifts, given so casually that Leilani wondered if Malika was unaware of her own generosity. Of all the times she had spent on land, this was the most wonderful, and Leilani stayed well past the point where she felt the newly grown set of scales harden beneath her human skin. If she wanted, she could have returned to the sea any time she wanted, but she stayed with Malika. The human woman was a joy to be around, warm and kind, and always willing to answer her questions and teach her new things. And there were so many new things to learn. Countless songs and dances, different from the ones her sisters had sang in their barking voices. She helped Malika tend her garden, cooked for her in gratitude of her generosity, and brought her small gifts, flowers, pretty stones, and braided bits of grass to adorn herself with, for Malika seemed to like those things. It was a wonderful time, but eventually, Leilani began to long for the sea and told Malika as much. The woman went as pale as she had the first time they met and fell silent. Leilani explained herself, that Malika had been kind to her, and taught her many wonderful things, but the sea was her home. Malika nodded and went back behind the house to where a large stone lay. Leilani followed, wondering if there was some last thing that the human woman wanted to show her. Lifting the stone, Malika let out a cry of shock, then threw herself, sobbing, into Leilani's arms. Behind her, Leilani could see the tattered remains of her old skin crumbling to dust. She knew that humans had only one skin and had to be careful with it, just as her sisters had to be mindful of their sealskins when they went to land, but she couldn't understand Malika's distress over a skin that wasn't her own. It had been a particularly fine one, well shed in a single piece, but if Malika had really wanted to keep it safe, she could have found a better place to put it. Tearfully, Malika apologized for what had happened to the skin, begging that Lilani forgive her. It was just an old skin, Lilani reassured. If you want another one that badly, if you want one that badly, I can give you another one next year. Malika stopped crying and stared blankly at her. Another? Yes, you silly thing. Lilani smiled at how rapidly Malika's expression changed to one of confusion. Human faces were so endearing that way. Though, if you're going to be so upset about it falling apart, I hope you'll take better care of the next one. She knew that she was making a promise, but it was an easy enough one for her to keep, when all Malika wanted was an old skin and someone to spend time with her. For whatever reason, Malika had a hard time believing, though. The human woman didn't give voice to her doubts, but her face said it all so clearly. Come to the beach with me, Lilani said, taking her hand. You'll see. It would be easier than explaining to someone with only one skin that they couldn't change. Even her sisters with their sealskins didn't understand, berating her for her carelessness when she shared the beaches with them. Malika followed her, silent and confused, and resigned like the heroines of the songs her sisters sang. Lilani hoped that she wouldn't do something like trying to drown herself, like in all those songs. Lilani waded out into the water, feeling its coolness with her human skin, savoring the sensation. Malika stood on the shore, watching her, hands limp at her sides, eyes pleading for something that Lilani couldn't understand. Please don't drown, Malika begged her. Was it a farewell or something else? Lilani didn't know the proper response either way, so she responded with a question. Can you swim? Malika shook her head. Next year when I come back, I'll teach you. Lilani smiled one last time, enjoying how expressive her face was when she was human. Come to the beach and wait for me, like you did this year. Ducking beneath the water, she felt her human form slip away. It was always easier than shedding. One moment she was human, large and awkward in the water. The next she was a smooth and sleek serpent, her motion effortless. Lifting her head as high as she could, she saw that Malika had waded out after her. The human woman was frantically splashing and grabbing the clothing that Lilani had left behind, searching for something. For her. She couldn't hear as a serpent, but she could see well enough, and she knew how Malika's lips moved when saying her name. Lilani swam back to her for one last goodbye, swimming in a circle around Malika until a wave lifted her high enough to rest her head on Malika's shoulder, so that she could flick her tongue against the human woman's face. She could taste salt, but not the salt of the sea. Tears tasted different. That was something she would remember. Just as she learned that there were tears of sorrow and tears of happiness. She couldn't tell what Malika was saying to her, but she could see the sadness vanish, replaced by joy. Next year, when she returned to land to shed her skin, she would ask Malika what it was that she had said. And then she would make good on her promise to teach the woman to swim. Slipping gracefully away, she returned to the sea for another year. This time was different, though. This time she had someone who would be waiting for her on land, and she discovered it made all the difference in the world. Shedding was always a time of renewal and discovery for her, but never before had she anticipated so much and so soon. The end. So, I like that one quite a bit. I think that's very cute. I like how Malika just wanted some company. I mean, she didn't go around about it in a good way, but like, once she understood, Lilani is a person, and Lilani has to go, she was like, alright, let's do it. I'll get you your stuff. So, that was sweet. Or at least it ended sweet. And speaking of things ending, this will be the end of my little video. I've been talking for about an hour, holy crap. And my throat is starting to hurt, so... I will see you next time. Have fun, be good, make good trouble. maybe don't stay in Hilton properties. Or at least not mine. Until we get this shit fixed. Alrighty, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.